Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. So I just watched The Boys season 2, episodes 1 to 3. Let's talk about it. So the boys are back and oh my goodness, I cannot wait to break down the first 3 episodes of this season. But first of all, can I just sprinkle in a little bit of a complaint here because I had no idea that season 2 would be released on a weekly basis. Imagine how bamboozled I was when I found out that season 2 would be released on a weekly basis after the first 3 episodes. Why? Why Amazon? That is so annoying. Like, on the one hand, I get it. I get that they want to elongate the impact of this series. It's one of their best series so far. It's one that everyone has their eyes on, and that's very rare for Amazon Prime. And I always feel like Amazon Prime doesn't usually care because Amazon has so much going for it. They don't usually care about the content on their platform, and I very much noticed that. But when it comes to The Boys and Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, like a few years ago, but now it's The Boys that they're putting all of their blood, sweat, and tears into, and you can tell the entire page for The Boys has completely changed. They have like merchandise now which ties into the show, but it's also supposed to be this intelligent, meta commentary on capitalism and the use of superheroes as a commodity, but at the same time they're actually selling the merchandise. So it's like, there's a kind of cognitive dissonance here, Amazon. I don't think you quite understand the joke. Yeah, it's like they're telling a joke that they don't quite understand that they are the butt of, because this is Amazon, and they're trying to produce a meta commentary on capitalism. Like, are we not seeing the issue here? But aside from that complaint, I am obviously so glad to see this show come back. It was kind of pushed back a couple of months. I'm guessing because of corona reasons, and also maybe because the Umbrella Academy was coming out a couple of months ago, so they didn't really want to compete with that because they're very similar properties in my mind, just in terms of them being alternative comic book TV show properties. Like, not your granddad's comic book TV show, that kind of thing. But before we dive into my many thoughts on the first 3 episodes of season 2, please be sure to subscribe to my channel so you can catch new uploads, and make sure you turn on your notifications. Okay, without further ado, let's get into this. So when it comes to The Boys, it's such a difficult show to dissect because there are so many elements at play here. There are so many moving parts to this overall show, so many storylines to follow, so many themes to explore. So I'm going to focus mostly on what happened in the last 3 episodes, and then we're going to delve into the themes in a bit more detail when it comes to my overall season 2 review. Let's start off with Homelander. Now, I'm so glad to see that this show understands what the people want to see, because the first thing that we are hit with is Homelander in this performance of sorts during the funeral for Translucent. First of all, the name Translucent will never stop being hilarious. And then you have Starlight just singing in the background about how they never really knew him despite the fact that they could see through him. But back to Homelander, he is back at it again with his performance of being this ideal godlike superhero. He lives for this stuff. You can see just how important his image is to him, just as it is to the company of Vought overall, which we'll definitely get into. But when it comes to the character of Homelander, when we meet him in this first part of the season, we definitely see that he's on a bit of a power trip. He feels like he is not only the leader of the Seven, but he is an invaluable asset to the whole company of Vought. And it becomes evident that the secrets that were unveiled in the first season of the show really surprised Homelander and really made him feel unstable in his position as the leader of the group. And so he wants to kind of reclaim this power that he feels like he's lost somewhat. He wants to assert his dominance in not only the public's perception of him, but also within the company of Vought itself. And especially after the death of Sitwell, he feels like there is a seat on the table for him in order to be in a position of power within the company. But what he doesn't initially realize is that there are different power levels at play here at Vought, and actually the superheroes that are dressed up in the costumes that have those superpowers that were given to them by Compound V aren't actually the most powerful entities in that building. It is in fact the corporate powers that really make the decisions, that really call the shots. And the battle of wits that play out between Homelander and Stan Edgar, who's portrayed by Giancarlo Esposito, is just so clever because you see how Homelander thought he was coming in with the upper hand. He thought that he was this invaluable asset to Vought. Stan makes it very clear, no, baby, you've got it all wrong. You are nothing but a commodity commodity to us. You are nothing but a product to us. You are a product that is designed to sell other products which are more important to us, and that is of course Compound V. You're not even the main event. You're just the side to the main course. And you just see the look on Homelander's face when he realizes what's really going on here, and he realizes that Vought is not in the superhero business, it's in the pharmaceutical business. I think there was such a clever and clear distinction that was made there by the character of Stan Edgar, because it just really made you recontextualize the whole situation, and of course informs the decisions that are made later on in this season. But a reoccurring event that we see with Homelander is that whenever he feels like he has no power when it comes to Vought and the Seven and his entire existence as a superhero, he quickly makes his way to his son's house, where he gets to play family with his son and his son's mother. Now listen, these scenes are incredibly peculiar, but also very telling for the character of Homelander, because the show explored very well last season how he basically grew up as a test subject. He didn't really grow up with a proper childhood, and as a result he lacks the ability to empathize with other human beings because he was never treated as a human being himself, so he doesn't really know how to nurture those relationships. And so it's so fascinating to see him trying to interact with his son, and again trying to exert more power in that household, because he knows that his son's mother is in a very vulnerable position. He wants to have the upper hand at all times because he wants to be able to assert that dominance somewhere. And when it comes to Homelander's interactions with his son, I also think there's an added element at play here where he's trying to, I guess, recreate his childhood, or trying to give his son a version of a childhood that involves him, so that he can finally build that bond that he was lacking during his upbringing. But just when Homelander thought he couldn't feel less powerful, here comes Stormfront. Stormfront is this brand new addition to the Seven. She's a brand new superhero that's been introduced this season, and I have so many thoughts. I have so many thoughts. First of all, I don't trust this character even for a second. Even before the events of episode 3, which multi-layered to say the least. Even before then, I felt like this character was just so untrustworthy, and she puts up this front of being someone who doesn't just blindly follow what Vought tells her to do. She stands up for herself, she stands up for the other female members of the team. She very much criticizes Starlight for the way that she just complies with everything that Vought tells her to do, helping to create this image of this female superhero that's very sexualized. I mean, we see that she rejected the whole ensemble that she's been put in the previous season, except this time around Starlight has very much embraced, at least outwardly embraced, the whole aesthetic that Vought has created for her, this very bombshell aesthetic which we see doesn't really match with her actual personality. So Stormfront is very critical of that, and she seems very feminist. She doesn't really want to play the game that way. But I have my suspicions that she's a plant. I suspect that she is a plant, and the reason why she was asking Starlight to tell her how she really felt about Vought is because she's recalling the whole thing. She's wearing a wire, something. I do not trust her for a second, and I think it's very interesting that we see down the line that she seems to be trying to replace Homelander. I think it's very possible that the fact that Homelander killed Stillwell is known to Stan Edgar in some way, shape or form, and I think he sees a storm brewing, and I think in order to preempt this, he's trying to replace Homelander with Stormfront as the new leader, because she seems too comfortable in her role. Everyone else is much more jittery when it comes to defying Vought, but she just seems way too comfortable in saying what she actually thinks and going against the grain when it comes to how she's perceived by the public. She wants to be known as like the real one, the authentic one, and that is completely the antithesis of the type of hero that Vought has previously pushed onto the public, with Homelander at the forefront. So naturally we're seeing the beginnings of what could be a very interesting rivalry between Stormfront and Homelander. I think it's kind of like an out with the old and in with the new situation, where Vought is very conscious of the public image they have at the moment, and I think they're planning ahead for the future in creating this more authentic, more honest version of the superhero, as opposed to the kind of godlike beings that they were promoting previously through the characters of like Homelander and the rest of the Seven. And I think this could be a little bit of a commentary on influencers versus traditional celebrities here, where you had these traditional celebrities who felt just so out of touch, like they didn't feel human, they didn't feel like they walked among us, whereas the influencers have become so much more popular because they feel a bit more relatable and they feel like they're down to earth with us, but they still have that kind of special sauce about them that keeps people following. So now let's talk about the boys themselves. And when we first meet them this season, ooh, they're a mess. You can definitely see that they are struggling, living underground with Frenchie's associates. It's a really hard time. Huey is really going through it at the moment. The only thing he has to hang on to is his poor old phone and of course his interactions with Starlight. Now, his interactions with Starlight are very interesting because first of all, the whole mission seems to be trying to bring to light the idea that Compound V is the source of these superheroes' powers as opposed to God, which is what Vought kind of has promoted. And that does end up coming to light, and that is a tiny victory for Huey during these dire circumstances. But it is revealed to the world that Compound V is the source of these superhero powers. We haven't yet seen what the implications of this will be in terms of how the world will react, and other countries and other, military entities will react to this, because this show is very centered on kind of American defense and American offense and the military complex there. So it'll be very interesting to see how other countries react to this. So Huey does have that small win, but unfortunately it is overshadowed by the mess that they've gotten themselves into just overall, because they find out that Frenchie's associates are involved in some kind of mission whereby they brought along a super terrorist, someone else who has superpowers, and this guy is powerful. And so Billy, when he finally shows up, ends up making a deal with the CIA so that he could bring them the super terrorist, and in return they would help him find his wife. It's set up pretty early on in this season that Billy's first and foremost priority is trying to get his wife. He is trying to save his wife from wherever she is. He is trying to get his wife back by any means necessary, and he will step on everybody's toes in order to do so. And it's a very interesting team dynamic that's been created within the boys at this point in the season. I personally prefer it when they're working together as a team, when everyone's kind of getting along, especially Huey and Billy. Like, it's so unfortunate to see them be so antagonistic against each other. I just feel like the show flows better when they're fighting against the common evil that is Vought and their drones, as opposed to fighting against each other, because Billy is being so selfish here. He is being so selfish, and it is so frustrating to see, but at the same time it does clearly play into one of the show's major themes of not just trusting people who seem to be nice, because Billy is very gruff. He is very unlikable. Like, he's a character that you wouldn't usually like or root for, but he is one of the good guys, and I think the show definitely needs to remind us of that, but it's definitely making a point in portraying him in this unlikable way, because it's still showing that he is ultimately a good guy. He's just trying to save his wife, even if he is being a little bit selfish and a little bit unlikable at this point in time. Whereas on the flip side of things, you have these superheroes who have this, very positive, very righteous public image, but they are bad guys through and through behind the scenes. Going back to Billy stepping on toes, it is revealed that the terrorist, the super terrorist that they see in the video footage, ends up being Kimiko's brother. Now, this is such an interesting twist to introduce as well, because again, it plays into kind of disrupting the team dynamics at play here. You have this character who actually means something to one of the team members, and Frenchie is clearly on Kimiko's side on this. And first of all, I love Frenchie and I love his relationship with Kimiko. Listen, there's just some spark there. It's just so adorable. He just seems to see her and appreciate her backstory and her origins in a way that the other team members don't, especially considering he has a very similar backstory himself. But he messed up. He messed up when he left her brother alone with that can of, I guess, Homelander Coke. He was distracted. When it comes to Kimiko, she's definitely a blind spot to him, and I think her brother unfortunately used that to his advantage in order to get out and escape. But that whole team dynamic now is so disruptive because you have so many, sub teams within it. Obviously you have Billy, who's just trying to get his wife. Again, he's just so selfish this season. He is trying to get his wife by any means necessary. But then you have Kimiko obviously being against the idea of, hurting her brother and any harm coming to him, which is probably what's going to happen when he ends up in the hands of the CIA, let's be real. And then you have Frenchie backing her up, and Huey's just trying to hold the whole team together. And then you have Mother's Milk just trying to get home to his wife and kids. Like, it's just, I am looking forward to seeing them just get it together and fix things up so that they can just work together as a team cohesively. But that might be coming sooner rather than later, because unfortunately we see at the end of episode 3 that Kimiko's brother ends up being killed by Stormfront. Now, it wasn't enough to just kill him. It wasn't enough to just disable him by breaking his hands. But of course she had to add in the racial slur. Of course she had to be racist on top of everything else. And my brother called this because while she was ravaging through that black family's flat, she didn't seem to have a care in the world. She seemed like there was a bit of sprinkling of racism in there. But when she killed Kimiko's brother, it was cemented. Wow. On top of the fact that she's two-faced, on top of the fact that she's a plant, she's an industry plant, mark my word, she's also racist because of course, she is. Oh, I can't wait to see what comes of this character. I want her to die slowly, painfully. Wow. And I think what will really propel them forward and act as an excellent form of motivation is not only the fact that Kimiko's brother died, but also that interview afterward. Essentially, we have Stan going up there on screen telling the world that he had no idea that Compound V existed. No idea in the slightest. This was all Stillwell's fault because of course he's going to put the blame on someone who's already dead and can't defend herself. Wow. That entire interview was very much about Vought trying to regain control of their public image and to save their public image after this huge controversy. It was damage control. It was all damage control and it was all lies because of course he knew. But instead of admitting that this was a deliberate and systematic decision that was made for the company, they decided to blame it on a few bad apples. Are we seeing a narrative that we may have seen before? Does this rhetoric remind you of anything that you may have seen in real life? I think it rings a bell, no? But the cherry on top of this interview is when you see Homefront take center stage and she is performing. She is giving the performance of a lifetime. She is taking on the role of Homelander using the very same rhetoric that he does. We are not the superheroes. The people on the ground are the real heroes. Oh, she's creating a whole image for herself. And it is fascinating to see Homelander's face during that entire exchange. Already he was angry that she ended up killing Kimiko's brother instead of him because he had explicitly told the team to leave him alive so that he would take care of it, and she ended up killing him anyway. But not only is Homelander against her, and he's already a worthy adversary, but now the boys are seeing the BS rhetoric that she is spreading, the BS image that she is spreading after what happened to Kimiko's brother, and that's also infuriating them. It's infuriating Kimiko, and it's providing this great motivation for the team to get together and take down this new bad guy ASAP. And finally, it wouldn't be a complete review of the boys without mentioning the Deep. Chase Crawford's portrayal of this character is stunning, incredible. Because this character obviously plays into the overall theme of moral ambiguity when it comes to a lot of these characters. Like I mentioned before, the case of Billy, he's very selfish, he's very unlikable right now, but he's still ultimately the good guy. Whereas here we have a case where the Deep has clearly shown his ugly side. He's already shown how he has a penchant for disrespecting women and even assaulting them sexually, as we saw in season 1 in the case of Starlight and how she was introduced to the team dynamics there. But here this character is on this kind of redemption arc, kind of, except he's also comedic relief, which is an interesting combination there, where we have a character who's committed some really serious crimes and that's why he's been outed out of the team, but now he's kind of on this redemption arc and it's really funny, but also he's trying to get back into the team, and do we agree with this? And we see that kind of come to a head in episode 3 where he finally confronts Starlight and she is very unhappy to see him there, and he's obviously mourning the loss of Lucy which again plays into that kind of comedic aspect of the character, whilst at the same time sharply juxtaposing that to the very serious crime that he committed against Starlight. But he's taken on board the teachings of this cult after he had this whole period of self-discovery whilst he was high on mushrooms and listening to the Google Dolls. Listen, there's so much happening here, but at one point his guild starts singing. This character is just so out there, even in a show that's already pretty crazy. And I am interested to see how this redemption arc will actually play out, because what he did was actually very serious, and it seems as though he's done it time and time again because of the self-hatred that he has for himself. So that's it from me. Now that I've tried to tell you guys just a smidge of my thoughts on the first 3 episodes of The Boys season 2, it's time for you guys to let me know what you thought of these episodes down in the comments below. I am planning on posting weekly recaps of season 2 of The Boys, so be sure to catch those, and please be sure to subscribe to my channel so you can catch new uploads. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.